I want to talk today about um, something called the undefended heart, which, if you know me, you know that's been my practice for many, many, many years. I heard the phrase, I don't know how many, 15 years ago. I didn't make it up, I didn't come up with it. And I was at a New Year's Eve intention setting many years ago. And that came up for me to say, "Oh, this is what my attention is gonna be for the year," and we would say it out loud and light a candle, and I said I wanted to live the year with an undefended heart, and then a few weeks later, somebody came up to me and said, "Can you do a Dharma talk on that? Because I don't know what that means." And I went, "Oh, I need to now think about what that means." And I did. I wrote a Dharma talk. I gave a Dharma talk as I was teaching, and then I realized it's not just one Dharma talk. It's actually a way of being in the world. And I think it's what the Buddha was teaching us when he's asking us to just be present for what is. Like right now, it's like this is I am not putting up any defenses to this moment. But without realizing it, I think we all have defenses. Sometimes we realize it, but sometimes we don't because we've been through so many things in our lives, um, and we've all been hurt. Every single one of us has been hurt many times by family, by friends, by society, by religion, by so many things. And oftentimes we build a wall, armor ourselves so that we don't have to get hurt again. And like I said, sometimes there's a clarity, a consciousness to that. I remember when I went to high school, I didn't know any, I knew five people. And because it was like two buses away. I was in the Bronx and I didn't know a whole lot of people. And I came home one day and wrote out a little, I call it a manifesto for people pleasing, because it was like, here's how you need to behave to make sure everybody likes you. That's what you do when you're 14. At least that's what I did. And so that was, I didn't realize it at the time, but that was beginning of some armor, a beginning of creating a persona that wasn't necessarily true, but I thought it would be a safe place to be. And so how do we protect? We build these walls to protect ourselves. And sometimes they're conscious, and sometimes they're unconscious. It just is a way we begin to react to the world again, like, oh, when we do this, it doesn't always go so well. So I'm not going to do that anymore. It's like Pavlovian almost. We get trained to behave certain ways because of the consequences of behaving differently, whatever that may be, however that shows up for any of us. My experience was when I said things that people didn't like, it didn't go well. So I learned to keep my mouth shut from a very young age. I'm not saying anything because it's not necessarily safe. Wasn't conscious, but it was how I started moving through the world. And it's not our fault. This armoring is not our fault, but we do have to become aware of it because it's really important. It's our responsibility to recognize it. There's a book called Deep Diversity by Shakil Chowdhury, and he talks about emotions exist at a covert and an overt level. When we get angry, happy, sad, etc., the emotion has to break our personal threshold before we become aware of experiencing it. And they're unconscious before that. And without full awareness, these emotions influence our behavior. And that threshold is our armor, because we're not just protecting ourselves from out there, we're protecting ourselves from feeling things. I don't want to feel particular things. I mean, as I said, I may not be conscious of it, but how often we stuff things down. It's like, no, 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 not for me. Thank you. La, 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 la. What can I do instead? And so to recognize how these defenses show up, if we want to start moving in a way that we're not defended all the time and we're acting more in tune with what's going always do this. I can't ever have this. I should always do this, blah, blah, blah. We create these things. So we have these fixed views of how things should be, how you should be, how I should be, how they should be, and if it doesn't match that, then it's painful. Um, we get caught up in greed, the three defilements, the three poisons the Buddha talks about: craving, not craving, not wanting, wanting, not wanting, and delusion. Sometimes we're like just fingers in ears. That's a way to exist. Denial, fear, judgment. Jack Kornfield, in his book A Path with Heart, talks about the demons on the path. These are the things that we have to come face to face with to begin to recognize, especially when we start sitting. That's when they start showing up, because the distractions fall away and here we are left with ourselves. And Brene Brown wrote many books. If you know who Brene Brown is, she wrote a book many years ago. I'm not sure which one it was. And she talks about Daring Greatly. I wrote it actually down. She talks about how we armor ourselves, and she talked about foreboding joy. And I was actually talking to someone about this on my drive out here this morning, because she was feeling so much joy and she was afraid it was going to end. So she didn't know how to be with the joy in this moment. And so sometimes we push it away because we don't want to have to deal with it ending. So we're projecting into the future and so we're denying the reality of the moment. That's armor, denying the reality of the moment. And she talks about perfectionism. Anybody? Yeah, me. Because if we're perfect, then they can't hurt us. But the problem is perfection is impossible. So we're doomed to fail. That's not fun. So armor is just like, we think we're doing something to take care of ourselves, or unconsciously, but it's not working out that way. And then the last one that Brene Brown mentioned was numbing. Drugs, alcohol, sex, shopping, working, all the gambling, all the things that are just right at our fingertips. And with our phones, we carry them around with us, all the distractions. That's a way to check out. I remember years ago, must be like 30 years ago, sitting and playing solitaire for like 6 or 7 hours. And I went, okay, wait, stop. What's going on? And I realized that something was coming up that I was like, I don't want to think about that, because it was like a big change in my life. And so I just kind of put the feelings aside, or attempted to put the feelings aside. So those defenses keep us oftentimes from what we want most. We build these defenses to keep ourselves safe, to keep ourselves from being hurt. And what it often ends up doing is keeping us from connection, because we've locked ourselves in and we've locked you out. Because when you're trying to be perfect, or you're trying to have people see you in a particular way, you're trying to be seen in a particular way, that's a wall that you're building. I have to say it because I always think about this when I talk about it. Remember the old Simon and Garfunkel song, I Am a Rock? I talk about that a lot, so I apologize if you're sick of me using that example, but it's, I'm a rock. He was hurt by love, and so he's just building a wall around him. I have my books, my poetry to protect me. I'm sealed in my armor, hiding in my room, safe within my womb. I'll touch no one. I'll touch no one and no one touches me, something like that. Anyway, yeah, that sounds like fun. Yeah, we build the walls around us and we become isolated, and it's so lonely. And all we want is to connect. And we don't know how, because we're so afraid. Or that's one of the things, that there's so much fear. So how do we begin this journey to living with an undefended heart? For me, it was when I really came to formal practice, when I really I dabbled in meditation, I read books, stuff like that. But when I found a teacher and started coming to class and sitting and really pausing and opening to what was inside. It was like, man, I didn't even know this stuff was in there. My father died. This is what came up for me, which was like out of the blue. My father died when I was 5. And that there was nothing said about it. It's like, your dad's not coming home anymore. And then we all go about our business. And so my world shifted totally, but with no way to deal with it. So all that stuff was in there that I didn't know. And so when I finally started sitting, this grief started coming up, and I'm like, what the hell is this? And there was, what I realized also, there was a fear of feeling it. It was kind of just, I don't want to feel this. It would poke its head up periodically throughout my life, but then I'd do whatever I did. I'd have another drink, or I'd play another couple hours of solitaire, or I'd go do, I'm a busy person, so I'd go start another project or whatever, until we're asked to stop and pause and sit and rest in being present with what's here, what's showing up in this moment. Discomfort, joy, sadness, fear, anger, rage. A lot of that right now. What's showing up, and how do I hold it without letting it run the show, without letting it make the rules? That's the piece. Jack Kornfield, again, in his book, A Wise Heart, he talks about growing up, and he said, and he had a lot of rage, and he said, meditation opened the door to accumulated rage that was too dangerous to feel as a child. We have all these experiences that we don't know how to deal with, that we're told, you're not supposed to feel that. Get over that. So we stuff things down. We create walls, but it's got to come out somehow, And this practice of an undefended heart is a practice of equanimity. And equanimity, one of the heart practices, is a deep intimacy with our experience. Equanimity asks us to be present for whatever shows up. And so that's what this practice is for me. It's been about how to show up. And Pema Chodron said, protecting ourselves from suffering does not mean we're being kind to ourselves. The truth is, we become more fearful and more alienated. And then I have this little book of The Pocket Thomas Merton. If you know who Thomas Merton was, he's a Jesuit or monastic, and very interested in Buddhism. And I just it's just little snippets of his writings. And I opened it up the other day, and it says, indeed, the truth that many people never understand until it's too late is that the more you try to avoid suffering, the more you suffer, because smaller and more insignificant things begin to torture you in proportion to your fear of being hurt. So it's not about building bigger walls. It's about they said they were terrified by that idea. Because it's like, will we be safe? We're so used to seeing the world in a particular way. What's it like to move differently? And it's not that we do it all at once. It's not like ripping a bandage off. We do it slowly. We start where we are because we can't start anywhere else. And for me, it's been a practice of resting on the teachings, of resting on the Eightfold Path and the Noble Truths. And it's like, okay, if I take all that stuff away, how do I show up? And the Buddha teaches us how to show up with kindness, with compassion, with generosity for ourselves, for others, with wisdom, with clarity. It's really about being present. How do we sit? And this is where the practice comes in. Sitting with something, like an annoying noise out the window. I had experience of jackhammers outside when I was doing my meditation class at home. And it was like, okay, right now it's like this. There's jackhammers. Or where we used to practice in LA, they would, Chris, there, there was a church across the street and they'd have quinceañeras and sometimes the mariachis would be practicing outside on the sidewalk and we're meditating. But it's not about going to a quiet place. There's a nun, Jetsuma Tenzin Palmo, Tibetan nun, and she said she was in a cave for 11 years. And she talked about, if I were only right here, where are my feet? Where's my butt? Right here. And the Buddha talked about, the Eightfold Path. He talked about the Metta Sutta. Metta, loving kindness, is an antidote to fear, and that we have an heart imbued with this. And so, and then I get the question, is it ever okay to armor ourselves? And I think no, because armor is a bit of a version, but again, we don't do it all at once. We do it slowly, slowly, slowly. And armor is not the same as boundaries. We absolutely have boundaries. Living with an undefended heart doesn't mean, it means we are clear in who we are and where we stand. And we don't let people get away with stuff. And Pema Chodron talks to this too. She says, it's not idiot compassion, which is when we avoid conflict and protect our good image by being kind when we should definitely say no. Compassion doesn't only imply trying to be good when we find ourselves in an aggressive relationship. We need to set clear boundaries. The kindest thing we can do for everyone concerned is to know when to say enough. Many people use Buddhist ideas to justify self-debasement in the name of not shutting our heart, of self-debasement. In the name of not shutting our heart, we let people walk all over us. It's said that in order to not break our vow of compassion, we have to learn when to stop aggression and draw the line. There are times when the only way to bring down barriers is to set boundaries. So that's a really important distinction. Undefended heart doesn't mean no boundaries. I'll invite you into my heart, but not into my house. So there's clarity, because part of the teachings is clarity, discernment, seeing the difference. This is what's wise and what's not wise, what's skillful and what's not skillful. That's living with an undefended heart. I'm open to this moment, and that is not okay. That's causing harm. You don't get to do that here. And then working to end that, if that makes sense. So today, July 13th, 2025, it's a shit show. It's been a shit show for a long time. So how I was thinking about this, is an undefended heart a smart thing today? And I think it's more important than ever. I use my drive out here as a mobile office. So I was catching up on a lot of phone calls and talking to another friend about this particular thing, about how it's so easy to harden our hearts in these moments. And that's not what this practice is about. It's about keeping my heart open with that wisdom and discernment to set boundaries, but learning how to show up in a way that we take care of ourselves. We take care of each other. We stay connected and we don't dehumanize anyone, because that's what's so easy, to dehumanize people. And that's when the greatest harm is caused. And we don't want to become that. We want to stay human. And so to watch the emotions that are arising, the anger, the fear, all the things that we're experiencing in these moments. And the invitation, as always, is to stay open and to stay soft. How do I do that? Mindfulness, sati, the word that's usually translated as mindfulness, means to be with the emotions so that you recognize them without letting them take over. Okay, there's anger, it's sitting right here. There's fear, it's right here. I'm present with these. What's the wisest thing to do in this moment? That's how we take care of ourselves. Right now it's like this. What's going on in this moment? And we don't open, as I said, we don't open our hearts, or we don't become undefended all at once. We don't just like rip off the scab. I mean, I had that moment of grief and recognition, and I was able to open that with therapy too. And I was able to open to that. And then there's some other pieces of my heart that I'm still working on, that are still like, oh man, it's better than it used to be. You know, what I learned not to open my mouth at a very young age. I'm still working through wise speech to open my mouth and say the things that need to be said. That's a hard one. That's going to be with me for a while, I think. Oh, well, right now it's like this. So we're gentle with ourselves as we move through this. We didn't get here overnight. We're not going to get over it overnight. This practice takes a lifetime. In the Buddhist tradition, it took the Buddha multiple lifetimes to develop these qualities until he took birth as Siddhartha Gautama, who then became Buddha. It became enlightened and known as the Buddha, which means enlightened one. So I take that as a metaphor for it's going to take a while. So be kind to yourself. Make the effort to keep doing it, but it's going to take some time. Um, so we start where we are. And even just the idea of letting the idea of the undefended heart in, it might seem like, oh, I don't like that, but just like put it on the shelf and look at it as you walk by. I'll just allow it into your consciousness. What does that mean? What would that look like for you? And bringing forgiveness and compassion and to yourself. Sometimes forgiveness for ourselves is a huge part of this, because sometimes metta practice is so challenging. Metta practice towards self can be really difficult. Anybody struggle with that? I know I did. It was like so painful. May I be happy. It's like, I don't deserve it, the judging voice. So it's like, yeah, everybody does. When, in the Metta Sutta, when it says we wish well for all beings, omitting none, it's like omitting none. Or all beings. It's not all beings and we're on the outside of the circle. No, it's like all beings, us too. So bringing ourselves in to this is really important. We have an undefended heart towards ourselves, you know? And sometimes we can just watch movies and chill out. What brings you joy? What brings you joy? You know? It's important. It's not just hard work. I love baseball. So I watch baseball. I'm going to listen to a ball game on my way home today because I love baseball. So what brings you joy? And hanging out and playing with my cats. And so unabashedly embrace your joy. I was I taught up in San Francisco 2 weeks ago. I gave this talk. It was at the Gay Buddhist Fellowship up there, and it was Pride. And I'm like, thank you for inviting me on Pride weekend when everybody's at the parade, but that's okay. But it was wonderful. It's a great group. And the slogan, the theme for this year's Pride up there was queer joy is resistance. Joy is resistance. So don't lose your joy in this moment that can seem so bleak. It's so important to ground in what brings you joy. So, I talk about the heart because this is a heart practice. It's so important. The Buddha says we sit imbued with a heart, 1/4 full of metta, of kindness, of goodwill, and 1/4 of compassion, 1/4 of appreciative joy, and 1/4 of empathy. So our heart is full of these beautiful qualities of joy and compassion and kindness and equanimity, of the capacity to be present. That's how we move through the world, with this wisdom and compassion towards ourselves and others. And it's so important. And I found this quote from James Baldwin. He said, I am terrified at the moral apathy and the death of the heart, which is happening in my country. And he wrote that 70 years ago. It's, or more, or it's so apropos. I don't want my heart to atrophy. We have to use it. We have to be in community with each other. We have to keep working to keep chipping away at that armor, to be fully present, because when we let go of that armor, we can be fully present for whatever needs to happen in this moment. And Bell Hooks, whom I love, said, the moment we choose to love, we begin to move against domination, against oppression. The moment we choose to love, we begin to move towards freedom, to act in ways that liberate ourselves and others. That action is the testimony of love as the practice of freedom. So there's a freedom in this. When we're armored, it's a form of aversion, of pushing things away, of not being present. That's dukkha. The second noble truth is our inability to be present with reality. And so we're cultivating the capacity to be present. And part of that is living with an undefended heart. That's a lens that I find so helpful to live through and say, how am I defending myself? And you know what? Maybe today I'm just going to go sit in my room with the blinds closed. And maybe today I can show up somewhere else. So we do what makes sense for us in the moment. That's really important. And she said also, to be loving is to be open to grief, to be touched by sorrow, even sorrow that's unending. We say yes to everything. If it's here, how can we greet it and be with kindness for maybe the first time? So I'm not afraid of those emotions anymore, because I have those emotions. They're here. Hi. Hi, how can I greet you with compassion? And sometimes I have to remember, and sometimes I'm in the middle of, and then I go, oh, wait, soften. Let go of the story, bring some tenderness. Okay, okay. Wow. There's been a lot of that lately. Okay, calm down, breathe, be present. What's important right now? How do we show up in this moment? And I was a couple of weeks, I've mentioned many times this book I read last year, See No Stranger by Valerie Kaur, Kaur, which is really a profound book. And we were at a interfaith prayer vigil downtown LA a month ago when everything blew up. And she spoke, this woman, Valerie Kaur, and she was talking about what was happening at that time. And she said, you can lift your rifles and aim them at us, but you cannot make us hate you. You do not have that power. We will choose to see your humanity even when you deny us ours. So that undefended heart is recognizing our humanity and recognizing the humanity of everyone. We don't go back into armoring ourselves and othering people. It's tough. It's tough. It's not easy, but I have found it to be so worthwhile, because there's an ease that underlies this freedom that allows moment, whatever that means, whatever shows up, whatever that brings. So, and one other thing I think it's really important is we can't help what emotions show up. We can't help it. A friend tells us about something that good happens to them, and all of a sudden we notice we're jealous. And we're like, I shouldn't be jealous. I'm better than that. I've been practicing too long to be jealous. That's silly. Jealousy. Oh, hello, jealousy. Wow, haven't seen you in a while. Okay, have a seat. Because when we're like, oh, why am I? That's judging. That's aversion. That's not an undefended heart. We can't help what shows up. Thich Nhat Hanh teaches Yogacara, which is a type of Buddhist tradition, and he talks about seeds of consciousness, those seeds that have been planted, you know, when we were little, all through our lives, because of the experiences we've had, our conditioning, what's happened to us. And when conditions are right, they bloom. But because we have the capacity to be present, and we have the wisdom and the compassion, we recognize those blossoms of emotions, those seeds of consciousness. And we can say, hi, have a seat, instead of letting them run the show. That's the difference of having an undefended heart that's held with wisdom and compassion than an armored heart that just lets those emotions take over, or running from those emotions take over. So, you know, I invite you to spend some time reflecting on this for yourself. You know, what's appealing about living with an undefended heart? What's scary? What gets in the way? And I'm not dead, so I'm not done. As I said, I still have pieces of me that are defended. The armor is much thinner than it used to be. When I first looked at this, I had armor that was not from this planet, which meant that nothing was going to get through from it. I saw it as an alien metal surrounding my heart. But now that's gone, and now there's just some stuff that I just have to chip away at. Old gunk. So I invite you to reflect on this for yourselves and see if it makes sense for you. As I said, I have found it really powerful, and I have the little group that I have. I call it Undefended Dharma, because I think I really truly believe this is what the Buddha was teaching. Be present for what is. You can't, be present for the joy and the sorrow, because anything else is a denial of reality. And reality always wins, regardless of how you react to it. It's always right here. It's hot. Well, yeah. You can jump up and down and scream, I hate the heat, I hate the heat. That just makes it worse. And just go, okay, heat, unpleasant. How do we go about our business with this? There's a big difference in how we view the world when we can say, okay. And again, I want to say it's not about acquiescence, because there's boundaries, but it's about being wise and skillful and compassionate as we move through the world. So thank you so much, my friends, as always, for your kind attention. And I'm happy to answer any questions or comments or rebuttals. I'm all about anything. So, any questions? So thank you again, my friends, for being here. What a delight. Again, there's a couple of baskets in the back to help support. If you want to be involved as a volunteer, there's a sign-up sheet. Please eat cookies. I just threw the donation link into the PayPal for the folks online, and remembering, I'm going to read Ian's little thing that he wrote going forth to end our sit today. This is beautiful. Going forth into this world so in need of light, may I bring all the kindness and wisdom I embody to each being in each situation that I meet. May the power of my practice today strengthen my resolve to be an agent of peace and justice in this world. Going forth together into this world so in need of light, may we together bring all the kindness and wisdom we embody to each being and each situation that we meet. May the power of our practice today strengthen our resolve to be agents of peace and justice in this world. We dedicate our practice for the liberation of all beings, the great, the small, the wise, the ignorant, the powerful, and the powerless. May all beings be liberated from sorrow and loss, hatred and injustice, scarcity and want, and every form of suffering. May our practice today be a prayer for peace, and may it benefit all beings without exception. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
See you next time.